Imagine finally having enough money to quit, and then your body files a complaint. That is the joke nobody laughs at. If you are over 50, listen close. You are playing a harder game now, and most people miss one hidden rule. It can let some workers leave early and avoid the usual 10% early withdrawal penalty on money still inside an employer plan. Not every account qualifies. Not every exit works. The fine print decides whether you found the door or just painted one on the wall. Legally, I have to say this is educational, not personal tax advice. My professor would call that boring. I call it surviving the paperwork. And stay with me, because later I am going to show you the healthcare bridge, the income window, and the 5 questions that tell you whether this move is real or fantasy. That part can save people thousands. Or at minimum, stop them from making one very expensive mistake. Look at Mike first. Mike did everything the culture praised. He stayed late. He kept grinding. He stacked money for years, then years turned into decades. He told everybody he would retire someday. Then someday showed up with bad knees, a tired back, and a doctor who suddenly had a lot to say. Mike is not lazy. Mike is not dumb. Mike is the guy the system claps for right up until his body starts sending invoices. Now look at Linda. Linda heard the rule before she got trapped by the calendar. She knew there was a narrow lane for people who separate from work in the year they hit 55. She knew it was tied to the employer plan, not some random account she rolled everywhere like loose change. So when her exit came, she had options. Not perfect options. Real options. Same basic stack of money. Very different life. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has tracked the pattern for years. A huge share of people leave work earlier than planned for reasons they never put on a motivational poster. Retirement is one reason. Illness and disability are another. And for people in their 50s and early 60s, health is not some abstract spreadsheet line. It is the thing that decides whether the plan survives contact with reality. That is not a motivational quote. That is the exit ramp. So the trap is simple. Most people think the only choices are keep working or pay the penalty. That is the lie. The actual game is more specific. If you separate from service in the same year you turn 55, the IRS has an exception for qualified employer plans. Qualified plan, employer plan, not every bucket, not every account. That distinction matters more than the pitch deck. And here is the part that gets people wrecked. If you roll the money into an IRA first, you may kill the exception. Gone. Door closed. The money is still yours, but the rule attached to the employer plan is no longer sitting there with it. That is the kind of mistake that sounds tiny in a meeting and huge on a tax return. Also, this is not universal magic. It is not for every account. It is not for every worker. And it is not for every retirement plan under the sun. The lane is narrow. For some public safety workers, the age can be 50. For everybody else, the main lane is 55 and up. Same country, same system. Different rules depending on the job. So say it clean. If you are leaving a job in the year you turn 55, ask whether the money is still in the qualified employer plan. Ask whether the withdrawal you want is allowed. Ask whether the plan terms actually line up with the IRS exception. Because the rule is not vibes, it is architecture. And that architecture is why this topic matters so much. People hear early retirement and imagine a luxury problem. Wrong. This is often a survival problem wrapped in a spreadsheet. The better question is not, how can I never work again? The better question is, how do I buy time while I still have health to spend it? That is the psychological side nobody wants to price out. At 55, the dream is usually movement, travel, walking without pain, seeing family, sleeping like a human being. At 75, the bill changes. More prescriptions, more appointments, more energy spent just maintaining the machine. So the hidden cost of waiting is not only salary, it is usable life. Money is useful when your body can still spend it. That is the whole point of the window. And the window is narrow. The gap between 55 and 65 is 10 years. Medicare generally starts at 65. That means a lot of early exits are really bridge plans. Not glamorous, not sexy, just math. If you leave too early without a bridge, your savings can get eaten by premiums before you even touch the fun stuff. This is why the rule of 55 is not just a tax trick. It is a timing tool. It can create a lower income window, and lower income can matter. A lot. If salary disappears, taxable income can drop hard. That can change the shape of the year. It can change which withdrawals sting more. It can change how aggressively you need to trim spending. I am not telling you how to file your taxes. I am telling you that timing changes the math. The same account balance behaves differently when your paycheck is gone. That is the real insider move. Not beat the IRS. Do not be that guy. The move is to stop stacking withdrawals on top of peak salary years when you do not need to. Sometimes the smartest year to exit is the year your income floor finally falls through. That is when the bridge can actually work. But there is always a catch. Of course there is. The elephant in the room is healthcare. The rule of 55 does not pay your doctor. It does not lower premiums by magic. It does not make prescriptions cheap because you were clever. If you leave at 56, you may still have 9 years before Medicare. 9 years is not a gap. That is a canyon. So you have to price the bridge before you jump. Check the cost of employer retiree coverage if you have it. Check COBRA if that is part of the picture. Check the marketplace. Check whether a spouse has coverage. Check deductibles, not just premiums, because people love to stare at the monthly number and ignore the part that actually hurts. That is how the rigged casino wins. They hide the real bill in the fine print they prayed you would skip. And do not guess. Guessing is for the house. Here is the clean way to think about it. First, the tax problem. Can the rule of 55 actually apply to your money? Second, the access problem. Is the money still inside the right employer plan? Third, the health problem. What does the bridge to 65 actually cost? Fourth, the spending problem. Can your life run on the smaller number? Fifth, the fallback problem. If something breaks, what is the backup plan? If you cannot answer those 5, you are not ready. Not because you are weak, because the math is incomplete. And let me hit the biggest trap again, because this is where people self-destruct. A lot of people here withdraw early and think, roll everything into an IRA for convenience. That convenience can be expensive. If the money leaves the employer plan too soon, the rule may stop protecting it. The penalty is not on your intentions. It is on the structure. The structure is what matters. The paperwork does not care about your good mood. This is why Mike lost the game. He kept saying he would figure it out later. Later is where traps breed. Linda did not have magical money. She had sequencing. That is the difference. Same dollars, better order, better outcome. And if you want the street translation, here it is. They call it retirement planning. A lot of times, it is really extraction planning. The system wants you to stay in the paycheck cage just long enough that your body starts leaking value. Then they hand you brochures and call it freedom. Not all of them, but enough. So do not let them play you. Listen to what they are actually saying. Now, let me slow down and make this real. Picture another person. Call him James, 56 years old, solid worker, good reputation, not rich but stable. He thinks the safe move is to keep his money parked exactly where it is until he is 65, because changing anything feels risky. That sounds responsible. It even sounds mature, but then his sleep gets bad. His blood pressure climbs. His commute starts feeling longer. And suddenly the gap between, I can work a few more years and I am physically done, gets very small. That is why this rule matters. It does not force an early exit. It creates a choice. Choice is the luxury most people lose before they even notice it is gone. Now look at the philosophy under the math. People love to imagine retirement as one giant beach scene. That is fantasy. Real life has a curve. Your spending does not stay flat forever. Early retirement often comes with more active spending. Travel, hobbies, family trips, maybe helping a kid move, maybe finally repairing stuff in the house that got ignored for years. Then later, the curve changes. Healthcare starts eating more of the budget. Not because you failed, because the body is a machine with a warranty written by nobody. So the real question is not, can I hit some perfect number on paper? The real question is, can I line up the years when I actually want to live with the years when I still have the energy to enjoy it? That is the part financial bros never say out loud. A balance sheet does not tell you when your knees get loud. It does not tell you when your dad gets sick and you need time. It does not tell you when your life stops fitting inside a work calendar. This is why some people should think of the rule of 55 as an option, not a goal. An option, a lever, a bridge, not a trophy. And options are valuable because they reduce panic. When you know there is a legitimate path out, you stop making fear-based decisions. You stop begging the company to keep you one more year just because you have no map. You stop rolling money around blindly, hoping paperwork will be kind. You stop confusing "I do not know" with there is no answer. There is an answer, but it lives in the details. That brings us to the part a lot of people skip because it sounds too boring, which is exactly why it matters. The hidden rule only works if the structure stays intact. Employer plan, separation from service, timing. Plan terms, withdrawal rules. If you change the structure too early, the exception can disappear. That is why a casual rollover can be such a costly move. People love convenience until convenience punches them in the tax return. So yes, the rule is simple in theory, but the execution is where the money lives or dies. And there is one more thing. Do not confuse "I heard about this on the internet" with "I checked my actual plan documents." Plans can differ. Employers can differ. Terms can differ. What works for one person may not work for the next. Same age, same salary, different paperwork, different answer. That is not a bug. That is the system. Which is why the smarter move is to do a small audit before you do anything dramatic. Who controls the money right now? What plan is it in? What happens if you leave the job in the year you turn 55? What happens if you move the money first? What is the bridge to health coverage? What is the actual monthly spend, not the fantasy version? Those are not fancy questions. They are the real questions. And if your answer to any of them is, "I think," that is your warning light. Because "I think" is how people lose thousands without noticing. It happens slowly. A rollover here, a misunderstanding there, a wrong assumption about coverage, a delay because the calendar felt generous. Then one day, the penalty is gone, the bridge is broken, and now the expensive version of retirement starts early. That is the trap. But here is the exit. You do not need to be perfect. You need to be precise. Get the plan summary, read the separation rules, ask where the money sits, ask what happens if you take a distribution, compare the cost of staying versus leaving. And if health coverage is the monster in the room, price that first. Not last, first. Because the decision is never just about money. It is about timing, structure, and survival. That is the whole game. If you are over 50, the biggest advantage you have is not some secret investing trick. It is that you can see the clock better than the 25-year-old who thinks time is infinite. You know the cost of waiting. You know the cost of stress. You know the cost of pretending your body will never ask for payment. So use that awareness. The rule of 55 is not a loophole for geniuses. It is a lane for people who understand how the lane works. If you know the rules, you can step out earlier without getting hit by a stupid penalty that could have been avoided. If you do not know the rules, the system happily charges you for confusion. That is why this is a trap and a tool at the same time. Trap if you guess. Tool if you verify. Now grab a pen. I want 5 answers. Did I separate from this employer in the same year I turned 55 or later? Is the money still inside that employer plan? Does the plan allow the withdrawal I want? What will health coverage cost until 65? If something goes wrong, can I still pay my bills without panic? If one of those answers is shaky, slow down. Not forever, just long enough to stop being sloppy. Because this is the part people forget. You can always earn more money. You cannot earn more time. And you cannot borrow a healthy back from your 70s and pay it back later. So if you are over 50, the real question is not whether retirement sounds nice. The real question is whether your exit is built on math or wishful thinking. If this saved you from one bad assumption, hit like. It helps the algorithm stop promoting junk and start promoting useful stuff. Subscribe if you want more street translation of the fine print they hoped you would never read. And comment your age. Tell me whether you are thinking bridge year, hard exit, or still deep in the grind. I read those comments like field notes. Don't let them play you. Listen to what they're actually saying.